The Mariners couldn't live with their failure. So where did that bring them? Back to Jorge Polanco. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, January 30th, 2025. This is Tony Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Mariners have re-signed Jorge Polanco to a one-year deal with a possible vesting option based on plate appearances. Chandler Rome and Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic were the first to break the news. Ryan Divish has since confirmed it. And it comes with a twist. Polanco is going to play third base for the Mariners in 2025, something he did not do last year. So, yeah, we're going to get into all of it. But before we do, quick shout out to our title sponsor today, FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. So let's go over, to kick things off here, let's go over the contract details that have been reported by Mark Feinsand and Ari Alexander. So Feinsand is reporting that the deal is going to give Polanco a base salary of $7 million in 2025. If he triggers that vesting option, there will be a $750K buyout, and the option either turns into a mutual or a player option. There isn't clarity on what it is specifically yet. Ari Alexander is reporting that he can actually make up to $11.25 million, though, in 2025 because there are $3.5 million in incentives. We don't know what those incentives are. But we do know that the vesting option is tied to plate appearances. How many? Don't know that. We might know that by the time that you're watching this, though. So obviously, we know the deal with Polanco. I mean, we just watched him play for the last year. The Mariners, of course, traded for him after 3 consecutive really good seasons with the Twins. And he goes on to have one of his worst years of his career. He slashes .213, .296, .355, 92 WRC plus, 16 homers, 45 RBI. Saw his strikeout rate kick up about 4% to 29.2%. Posted a 9.8% walk rate and was good for just .3 F4. He, of course, was dealing with a hamstring injury throughout most of the year, then a patella tendon injury that we didn't find out about until after the year was over. He has since had surgery to repair that. And the last time that I checked, or the last that I had heard, his agent said that he would be cleared for baseball activities this month. So I'm going to assume that that has happened and that the Mariners, hopefully at least, feel good about where his health is. Now, the deal is pending a physical still, so it's possible we might not hear official word from the Mariners until tomorrow or maybe on the weekend. We'll see. Mm-hmm. So obviously the Mariners declined Polanco's club option at the start of this winter, but after hitting brick wall after brick wall after brick wall trying to land major league infielder or two, the Mariners circle back here on Polanco. What do you think, Colby?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting, factors here, and a lot of, different avenues to which to kind of talk about what's next and, why this much, why blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it is at least nice to know like what the Mariners' plan is at third base, whether you like the plan or not. I like it more than Dylan Moore being your everyday third baseman. I'll say that much. Although Moore right now is still slated to be your everyday second baseman. So we'll see. But yeah, it's an interesting deal. We had talked about way back at the beginning of the winter. We talked about, no, you shouldn't bring Polanco back on the $12 million guaranteed, but that, if you got late into the winter and you could get a deal that he's happy with, that probably has a lot of incentives in it, then maybe you can consider bringing him back for less. And at the time, we didn't know that they only had, 15 to $20 million. We didn't know that, all this garbage was going to pop up again, although we kind of knew, but it wasn't official, So it is kind of interesting to see an idea that we had like back in November or October even kind of come full circle here as we get near February. So yeah, it's an interesting day for the Mariners, and it's an interesting reaction that we're seeing from Mariner fans. I don't think any of it's pretty split. There's a lot of the casuals are like, oh, Polo's back, that's fun, and a lot of the more diehards are happy with the move. And you can understand why. And I don't think it has anything to do with Polo himself. I think it just has to do with what it kind of represents. That's a little bit unfair to Jorge, because as far as we know, Polanco, good dude. We know he's a good hitter, or he has been throughout his career. He wasn't last year. He struggled with you. So the reaction is pretty interesting. But, overall, at the end of the day, I think the Mariners are better right now, assuming he passes this physical, which, by the way, pretty important, but he probably is going to pass it, you would assume. But I think they're better today. I like the idea of Polanco at third base more than I like Dylan Moore at third base and Ryan Bliss at second base. So at the very least, I'm willing to, be like, hey, look, it's a better shot right now. We'll wait and see what guy like Yoan Moncada gets and all that, blah, 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 before we decided this is the best they can do. Whatever, who knows? But at the end of the day, it's interesting. The reaction to it is interesting. And it really does kind of come down to how you want to, maybe not cherry, how you want to interpret Jorge Polanco's 2024 season, because that probably determines how much you are either excited or upset by this move, because there's a lot of different ways you can dig into this.
Yeah, I would say that I'm not excited nor upset. I'm just sufficiently whelmed.
Sure.
There's quite a bit of upside here, though, because again, we're talking about a former All-Star who was anywhere from 15 to 25% above league average the 3 years prior to coming to Seattle. And then you look at the struggles that he had in Seattle. I mean, one, it's his first time being in a different organization since he was like 16 years old. Yeah. And two, he's playing through significant lower body injuries. Like the hamstring was one thing, but then finding out that he was dealing with a patella tendon injury as well, which can be very, very, very serious. That, at least to a slight degree, changed my view of Polanco's 2024.
Certainly gained some more respect for him as like just a dude, right? Like going out there and playing every day through that.
For sure. So what he can bring to the table in 2025 to me is just up in the air, because we just don't know where he is health-wise, and we don't know if some of the struggles that we saw last year were also just natural regression. They weren't just due to the injuries, right? Because we had seen, over the last couple of years, or over his last couple of years in Minnesota, the K rate start to creep up. It went from 18.3% to 21.3 in 2022, and then from 21.3 in 2022 to 25.7 in 2023. We saw the WRC plus kind of take a slight hit, and he was a 1.5 win player and a 1.7 win player in 2022 and 2023, and also dealt with injuries in each of those years. So, you do worry about the body potentially just starting to break down. And you got to worry a little bit about just where he is in terms of, his off-season prep. Is he playing catch up? Is he going to continue to have to play catch up as we get into spring training, into the regular season? There's just a lot of question marks surrounding Polanco. But if he is healthy, maybe you actually get to see the Jorge Polanco you thought you were acquiring last year. And so again, that's why I say that there is some upside here, and there is a reason to be excited by it. But yeah, I would just say that I personally, again, because of all the question marks, I just kind of find myself somewhere in the middle right now. I'm just kind of whelmed by it. I would say this, at least, and I kind of joked about this with you before we started recording. It's better than Brendan Rodgers or Yoan Moncada to me. It's better than taking one of those shots.
And by the way, we understand that that's not a high bar to clear. We get it. Haha, your jokes are hilarious.
Yeah.
Understanding. But we're not going to not talk about the move that the Mariners just made and how it can help, the 2025 club, while also acknowledging the risk like we just did. So we're going to talk about Polanco and what he can bring to the ball club and how we think he transitions to third base. But yeah, there is obviously an acknowledgement that needs to be made that like there was no way that this is plan A, B, C, whatever for the Mariners. No shot. Don't let them try to spin it on you. Maybe they thought Polanco might be a nice guy to bring back at this point of the offseason, but they didn't plan on making him their everyday third baseman 3 months ago. So, just, again, you can be whelmed by the deal. I can't imagine being like super upset by it, but you're just like, we get it. We totally get it. We're right there with you. But also there is legitimate upside here.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's dive into the fit a bit more, the whole third base situation in just a moment. But first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. All right, folks, Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We are talking about the Jorge Polanco signing. And with the news of the signing came the news that the Mariners are planning to play Polanco at third base this year. Something that he did not do over the course of 2024 in his first year with Mariners. Something that we thought would be possible for him to do, but they didn't explore it. But yeah, everyone's confirmed it now at this point. Ryan Divish has confirmed it. Shannon Drayer's confirmed it. Mark Feinson's confirmed it. Kim Rosenthal's confirmed it. Anyone that has been talking about this move has confirmed Jorge Polanco is playing third base for the Seattle Mariners in 2025. So, what do you think?
I mean, like I said, it's not our first choice, right?
Not the second.
No, but to me, like if you were like on board with the Yohan Moncada idea, this is it. Like it's the same thing. Switch hitter, power from the left side, mostly probably a better hitter from the right side. Like it's a very similar idea. So yeah, it's interesting. Now, can Polanco play a good third base? We know third base is an important position defensively. We know that. We also can acknowledge that it's easier than second base, not significantly, but it is easier than second base. And I think particularly for a guy like Polanco, who's coming off of a bunch of lower leg injuries, not having to cover as much ground as you do as a second baseman, I think could help. There are a lot of Perry Hill truthers out there. I guess we'll see. Didn't really help him much last year at second, did it? But I guess we could just blame the knee for that. So defensively, we'll see where he's at. I imagine there will probably be quite a few times where he is removed from the game in the 8th, 9th inning for a better glove. But it is interesting to see how that goes defensively. I think it's a better fit for him than second base. So I think he'll be good enough. You're certainly downgrading from Josh Rojas defensively, but there really is, no way you weren't downgrading from Josh Rojas defensively this offseason anyways. So I do think you're upgrading offensively at third base. As bad as Polo was last year, as inconsistent as he was, he's still 15% better than Josh Rojas. So yeah, defensively, I don't know. We'll see how the knee looks and all that. Offensively, I do feel like he is an upgrade over what the Mariners had at third base for most of last year, but am I sure he's going to be really good? No, I'm not, but I do like the track record there. And I do like that he is now getting a second shot at T-Mobile Park, as in he has, Like he understands the batter's eye now, and he's adjusted, and hopefully he's used to it. And hey, you know what? Maybe Edgar Martinez figured something out there in the when he took over. Who knows? So yeah, I do think that. I think he's probably going to be a little bit below average defensively at third base. And I think I would feel pretty comfortable coming off of the injury saying he probably starts off a little slow, but I think he's going to end up being league average bat at least. So overall, I think it's fine.
It's interesting, right? Like after having a down year in his first experience of T-Mobile Park, he chose to come back. Now, obviously, I don't think there were a lot of options out there for him, but that's something that we typically don't see. And on the flip side, we don't see the Mariners, after bringing in a veteran who then experiences a down year playing half of their games at T-Mobile Park, we don't see them bring those guys back. And obviously, again, the circumstances are the circumstances, but still, it's at least interesting to note. And Chandler Rome, Astros beat reporter for The Athletic, wrote, Polanco chose a reunion with the Mariners over strong overtures from the Houston Astros, who planned to play him primarily at second base while moving Jose Altuve to left field.
Yeah, moving Altuve to left field in favor of Jorge Polanco is certainly a choice, but
fascinating. But
yeah, it is interesting that, you had an opportunity to go to a much better hitter's park, and perform there and play second base, the position he prefers. And he chose instead to stay in Seattle. Now, obviously, we don't know what Houston offered. We know about what they offered him, a month ago, give or take. But it could just simply be Seattle just paid him so much more or that he took it. But again, this is a pillow contract, right? It's what they call pillow contract. Polanco wants to get back on the market next year, having come off a really good year. And typically those guys won't pick Seattle. So that is an interesting angle here. But, again, until we know for sure what the Astros were offering, if they were really offering 4, then yeah, it makes sense that Polanco would choose Seattle. But, if the offers were relatively close, I do think that's interesting. And it is, again, I do wonder, like, hey, second crack at T-Mobile Park, you kind of understand the batter's eye now and how you have to adjust to all that. We know that he can certainly hit plenty of homers at T-Mobile Park, particularly left-handed. So yeah, it's interesting to say the least. And I don't know if that makes Mariner fans feel any better that the Astros were apparently the second, contender for Polanco, but that's a team you've been chasing for a while. And they thought Polanco could be better. Maybe you did too.
We always hear like, oh, players leave Seattle and then they get good again. Mm-hmm. And the Mariners are a year or two early on giving up on guys. And so far it seems like they're going to go for a round 2 of Mitch Garver, and now they're going for a round 2 with Jorge Polanco. I guess we'll see if it works out this time, And maybe there is something to a player getting another crack at adjusting to playing at T-Mobile Park and all that. So, yeah, I mean, Polanco is going to be an interesting case study as well as Garver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is there something to be said for the adjustment year at T-Mobile Park, followed by a bounce back as they adjust? And like you said, the Mariners really haven't gotten that shot because you kind of look at the guys who have struggled in year one; they haven't gotten a second year. So yeah, that'll be interesting to track. And kind of the guy who did have a really good year, Gino, he had a down year the second year. So it's interesting to see how they how they perform. But it is, again, to me at least, interesting that Polanco had an opportunity to go play his preferred position in a significantly more favorable ballpark. And he chose Seattle instead. Like I said, I don't know what it says, but it says something, and I'm interested to know what led Jorge to make that decision. And it could just be money. Like, again, it could just be the money.
Well, again, I mean, there's an opportunity here, and maybe the incentives are just so far out of reach that he'll never get there. But there is the opportunity here, as reported, to get $11.25 million. The offer we heard that he got from the Astros was 1 year, $4 million. Now, maybe were there also incentives involved in that? We don't know. And, did they potentially offer something better than that as the talks went along, and as they probably heard the Mariners were also involved and maybe someone else was involved?
We heard the Yankees.
We don't know.
A little bit.
Yeah, the Yankees.
Yeah, just real fast, by the way. If Polanco gets to a point where he hits all those incentives, you're going to be very happy paying him $11 million.
Oh, yeah.
So don't worry about the incentives. They're not really a thing.
You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We're talking about the Jorge Polanco signing. So what next? The $7 million eats pretty significantly into what we believe to be the rest of the front office's budget, which was about $12 million after signing Donovan Solano, or anywhere from 11 to 12. I'm not sure if the high end of what Polanco's contract could be is factored into that. Because if so, and they're factoring in all $11 million, and payroll's done with what we know about it. Right now, Dylan Moore is your second baseman, or Ryan Bliss is, and Dylan Moore is your super utility again.
Either way, you like for that to not be the case.
You have a platoon at first base of Luke Raley and Donovan Solano on paper. Yeah. What do you think? You think this team has another move in them in the infield?
In the infield, I don't know.
Or just in general? I mean, we talked about the outfielders the other day.
I do think that there is a bullpen move to be made here. I don't think that necessarily has to cost more than the league minimum. We've talked about a few guys today on CTZ that the Mariners could go target. I think they'll be opportunistic. I still think they might be interested in Brendan Rodgers, and we'll see what kind of deal he can get. Polanco got a pretty good deal, despite, being this late into the offseason, but Polanco's also been a significantly better player than Brendan Rodgers in his career. So if you could land a Rodgers for like $2 million, sure. Yeah, do it. If you're Jose Iglesias, this is probably a really good day for you, because you're probably going to get $7-8 million, which you might have been asking for anyway. So who knows? But yeah, I think they still have the room, as I think right now they probably have about $4 to $5 million. They could just choose to sit on that, which they probably will, and save it for the deadline, quote unquote. But yeah, I think they're probably still looking at a Brendan Rodgers. I still think that they would probably be, I still think they're open to a Luis Castillo trade. I doubt that's going to happen. But there is also the possibility that maybe they do find a deal to unload one of these contracts and they can go get what for it. I don't know. Like, it seems impossible to think that they're going to clear enough money for Pete Alonso to consider you. But I think they do have one more move left in them. I have no idea what it's going to be. I would guess trade would be my guess, but so far free agency has been the preferred route by the Mariners. So I do think they have one more deal on them. I should say like one more like acquisition deal. If they could sell, any of Haniger's money, they might do that as well. Sure. But I do think they're going to make one more add to the infield. But I do think it's probably more Brendan Rodgers than it is like Brandon Lau. But again, we'll see.
I'm still on the outfield bandwagon.
Same.
It was even reported today that the Reds and the White Sox have had talks about Luis Robert. We even heard a name thrown out there, Edwin Arroyo, former Mariners prospect. So we have at least some idea of what that might cost. The Mariners could make that happen, and I think they should explore making that happen, because they can still make it work. They can still make it work, like we talked about yesterday.
We also heard that the White Sox might be willing to include some money. They're willing to include money if it's not just a salary dump for them. Might they take on Mitch Haniger for a better contract, for a better prospect package? Maybe. So could you trade Luis Robert, or could you trade, like Laz Montes and Michael Arroyo and Ty Locklear and Mitch Haniger for Luis Robert? Maybe. And should you? Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Because if you can come out of this offseason with everything that's happened with Luis Robert, Jorge Polanco, and Donovan Solano, it's not amazing. It's not terrible either.
It's certainly a higher upside than you had.
Yeah.
And so, it's a lot still hinges on Robles as well, but Robles, Julio, Cal, Randy, Rayleigh, Polanco, Solano probably at this stage. Like, it's not great, but you don't need a great offense. But if you add a Luis Robert, somebody with that upside to the middle of that offense, you push, Randy down to 5, you push, Rayleigh to 6, Solano 7, Polanco's 8, JP's 9. Like, it's, hey, now, like, you might be cooking there. So, we'll see. I still think they should be opportunistic. I still think that they should be aggressive in the trade market. But I think that their aggression is going to come down to if they can move Mitch Haniger and how much money they can save if they're able to, in fact, move Mitch Haniger. And the only reason I think they might be able to, this is definitely cope, is that, Ryan Divish did say, like, no, I don't think both the Mitches are going to be on the opening day roster. So probably just means Haniger's getting DFA'd, but who knows? Maybe. I mean, at this stage, if you could save even like $3 or $4 million on Mitch Haniger, you absolutely should do it, because that might be the difference between you getting Jose Iglesias and rolling with like Ryan Bliss on your bench and your part-time second baseman. So they should be pretty aggressive in trying to trade some of Haniger's contract. And there are a couple teams out there where I think you can pull that off, but we'll see if they can or not.
Well, we'll see what happens, but at the very least, the Mariners have done something. Jorge Polanco is back, pending physical. Let us know what you think about the deal down below. That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Gonzalez, Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.